today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears the WBO has officially ordered Amanda Serrano, the featherweight division's undisputed champion, to defend her undisputed crown against her mandatory challenger, Danila Ramos of Brazil, who was very recently in action in Argentina opposite the ring, then WBO interim champion Brenda Carvajal.
Brenda lost the points decision. To my surprise, I picked Brenda to win that fight.
Both Serrano and Ramos last fought earlier this month. Serrano beat Heather Hardy by a unanimous decision in Dallas for the second time, and Ramos defeated Brenda Karen Carvajal by way of a split decision in Buenos Aires. If the fight gets made, it will be the sixth defense of the WBO title for Serrano, and her second defense as this division's undisputed champion. Still plenty of time left in this year to schedule this mandated title fight at either the end of the fall months or the beginning of winter.
There is.
Amanda Serrano very recently inked a pact with the PFL to resume her career, her endeavor in the world of mixed martial arts alongside Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall.
It's my understanding that will kick off next year, leaving plenty of time left in this year for Amanda to squeeze in another fight, another boxing match.
Danila Ramos, 38, has been in 3 interim title fights in her career, losing a unanimous decision to Elham Khaled at 130 pounds, a split decision to Katharina Thanders at that same weight in 2019.
Split decision loss.
Both fights at 130 pounds. She then decided to move down in weight, move down to 130, down to 126, where she very recently defeated Brenda Carvajal for the WBO interim title. It's not clear why there's an interim title in the division, since Serrano has been active since beating Hardy for the WBO title in 2019. The WBO is giving the two sides 10 days to negotiate and come to a fight agreement before it gets sent to a purse bid.
Only 10 days?
Seems like the WBO really wants to get the ball rolling for this fight, get it rolling in a jiffy, because both Amanda and Danila, they just fought.
And they're only giving them 10 days to reach a deal.
Not even 30, like what you usually hear when a mandated title fight, when a mandate comes down. In any event, I expect that the fight will happen. I expect that Amanda will square off against Danila Ramos before this year is out, and what she'll face in Danila.
Danila Ramos, 38 years old, from Brazil.
Seasoned veteran, been around the block a couple of times, fought some good fighters, been in there with Elham Khaled and Katharina Thanders, more recently Brenda Carvajal.
Sporting a professional record of 12 wins with 2 losses, no draws.
1 knockout, only 1 recorded knockout. Needless to say that Danila Ramos, for all her experiences she's had in the pro ranks, she's not the puncher that Amanda is, so the edge in power almost immediately goes to the champion, goes to Amanda Serrano.
Amanda Serrano, who sports a professional record of 45 wins with 2 losses and 1 draw, 30 knockouts.
Having never been stopped in 48 professional contests, 48 professional bouts, Danila, she's never been stopped either. Amanda is about 4 years younger, just about 4 years younger than Danila Ramos. Amanda's 34, whereas Danila is 38.
Capable fighter.
A scrappy fighter that proved to be a little bit too athletic, a little bit too accurate, better punch placement than Brenda Carvajal, better than Brenda, but nowhere near the level of Amanda.
Danila has a propensity to trade punches mid-range to inside. That might have worked for her with Brenda Carvajal, but with Amanda
Serrano's patented body work, her body punches, those short hooks and counter hooks mid-range to inside almost immediately come to mind.
Yeah.
Trading punches in the pocket may have worked for Danila Ramos with Brenda Carvajal, but opposite the ring, Amanda Serrano, I can definitely see Amanda catching and shooting and working that body.
Danila's a long and limber fighter for featherweight. Good height, good length.
She can move a bit. She's athletic, but she's got a propensity to stay mid-range to inside on her opponents, trading punches in the pocket. If she tries that with Amanda, she's going to get outgunned. She's going to get outdogged.
You will notice that Amanda Serrano's hooks are shorter and tighter hooks than what you get from Danila Ramos. Danila's punches are wider.
Somewhat telegraphed, easier to read, easier to counter.
She looks a bit slower than Amanda.
Which isn't surprising. She's about 38 years old. She is 4 years older than Amanda Serrano.
4.
So you see a situation to where if Danila Ramos stays in character and she fights the way she's been fighting, fight by fight, she's going to get outgunned. She's going to get outdogged by Amanda Serrano. That if you try to stay in the pocket with Amanda, even though you've never been stopped before, there's a first time for everything, and she might stop you. That's if Danila Ramos decides to stay in the pocket with Amanda. If she doesn't and she tries to box and punch,
She'll get outworked.
she tries to box and punch, move lateral, and stay behind straight shots, the aesthetic of the match might be something similar to what we saw in the Diana Santana fight many years ago. Amanda's used to that. You know, fighters that are otherwise ballsy fighters and brave fighters that might like to sit in the pocket, they have a habit of changing their tune when they get around Amanda.
It's when you see Amanda cutting off the ring, doubling up and tripling up on that jab,
Marching forward in that high guard, catching and countering, catching and shooting.
walking down the opponent.
No, I don't like Danila Ramos' chances against Amanda Serrano. It's a good fight. It's a solid fight. And Danila Ramos is a solid fighter. But I don't think she has the ingredients to take those titles away from Amanda.
Amanda's gonna beat her to the punch because she is a little faster and more prolific, on top of being a stronger puncher and a southpaw.
Many of those has Danila Ramos squared off against.
Southpaws.
Many of those has she faced. That's sure to bother her. So I like Amanda Serrano to retain the undisputed crown at featherweight, and we'll see if and when they get a fight date down for this mandated title defense. In men's cruiserweight news, word around the campfire seems to be that Goulemarian versus Riakporhe may be next. Arsene Goulemarian states, "My next fight will be against Richard Riakporhe. They want it to be in England, but we want to do it in Armenia. We will try together with Levon Avtesian, APBC president, to organize this evening in Armenia Sports Ball 24.
I can't tell you what kind of money, if any, the people in Armenia, or anybody really, is putting behind Arsene Goulemarian, the least active champion at cruiserweight today.
Because you figure if he had a major financial backer, he would be a more active champion. In the last 3 years or so, he's only fought once, just once, and that was in November of last year.
That's it.
Sporting a professional record of 27 wins with no losses, no draws, 18 knockouts, 35 years old. He is an entertaining fighter to watch, a mid-range to inside fighter, mid-range to inside bruiser.
Hooker.
Mid-range to inside hooker. He is an action fighter, the same as Richard Riakporhe, very strong puncher from out of the United Kingdom. I feel like Richard and the people at Boxer, they kind of painted themselves into a corner here, because you hear what Arsene is saying. He wants the fight in Armenia. He wants the fight in his neck of the woods on his terms. And the people at Boxer have very little leverage in the situation because Richard isn't as mandatory or anything.
No.
It's not like this fight is a mandated fight. It hasn't been ordered.
No.
If what Ben Shalom wants is for Arsene Goulemarian to defend his title voluntarily against his man Richard Riakporhe, he's going to have to pay to play. He's going to have to make it worth his while, because what Arsene wants is for the fight to happen in Armenia,
Ben would want it to happen in England.
where Richard Riakporhe would have home field advantage, sporting a professional record of 16 wins with no losses and no draws, 12 knockouts. Richard is an entertaining fighter to watch, a strong puncher, but they kind of screwed the pooch for him. They screwed the pooch there. They were supposed to be fighting Jai Opataya for his IBF title, and they actually had some leverage.
Yeah.
They had mandatory status.
Here's what happened.
Masternak was the initial mandatory that Jai was supposed to be facing, but Matthias Masternak dropped out. Richard Riakporhe was elevated to mandatory challenger.
They get to talking to each other, the two teams. Jai Opataya ends up inking a deal with Matchroom.
Purse bid gets ordered, purse bid rolls around, and before you know it, Richard Riakporhe withdraws. He withdraws from the purse bid, thereby relinquishing his mandatory status. So he's out of the loop with the IBF.
He's got no leverage with them, not anymore.
Why did he withdraw, you ask? Well, the people at Boxer likely didn't want to get into a bidding war with Matchroom. They didn't want to run the risk of Matchroom potentially winning the purse bid and Richard having to cross over to their side of things for the fight. So rather than deal with that, they chose to circumvent it altogether. They told Richard to withdraw. Richard, who saw action 2 times last year and has already seen action at least once this year, back in January, opposite the ring former champion Krzysztof Glowacki.
Richard has a respectable resume. Tommy McCarthy, Chris Billum-Smith, Krzysztof Glowacki.
He's got a decent resume, and he's coming along. It was initially thought that if he's withdrawing from a fight with Jai Opataya, it must be to box his Boxer stablemate, Chris Billum-Smith, in a rematch. Now that Chris is WBO champion, but doesn't look like he's going to be fighting Chris if he's pursuing a fight with Arsene Goulemarian. Arsene Glenn, who, as stated, in the last 3 years, he's only boxed once.
He sat out all of 2020, all of 2021, only boxed once in late 2022 last year, and he has yet to box this year.
Says he's willing to box, Richard, but he wants it to be in Armenia.
Drives a hard bargain.
It is seemingly a difficult fight to corner, a difficult champion to deal with. He's not just bowing down and bending over to Ben Shalom.
The only inference I can make is that Ben wants the fight to be in the UK, and if that's what he wants, he's got to sweeten the pot for Arsene Goulemarian, the defending champion, who, to my knowledge, is under no such order to defend the title against Richard.
Richard Riakporhe, an entertaining fighter who, for me and my money, has real potential to become a draw, perhaps the face of boxer, if not for Ben Shalom's bumbling decisions.
I remember all that talk a couple of months ago about trying to make Lawrence Okolie the face of boxer. Once they finally got him to cross over from Matchroom over to their side, needless to say, it hasn't worked out for him.
You'd actually have more success making Richard the face of boxer, given his base style and how he goes about fighting a fight. He's got a more fan-friendly, entertaining style than Lawrence Okolie.
Lawrence Okolie has about as much charisma as a warm bus seat, and stylistically, watching him fight's like watching paint dry.
Richard Riakporhe seems more of a winner to me than Lawrence Okolie. More possibilities to turn him into a marquee attraction, provided they guide him the right way and make the right decisions for him. I don't think it was at all wise to withdraw from the Jai Opetaia fight, because now's the most opportune time to fight Jai. He hasn't fought in over a year, but they pulled him out of that, looking to avoid a purse bid situation with Matchroom, so here we are, at the mercy of Arsene Gulamarian.
I reiterate, seems a hard man to corner, hard man to get into the ring. Just one title defense in the last 3 years.
It's either Richard Riakporhe is going to have to get his passport out and pack his bags, or Ben Shalom is going to have to give Arsene Goulemarian reason enough to come to England and defend his title there, i.e., he's got to pay to play.
You ain't got mandatory status. You ain't got the leverage to force this guy to fight.
To my knowledge, they don't. They were all tied up with the IBF the last couple of weeks and the last couple of months, so
something's got to give.
Richard Riakporhe is actually 2 years older than Arsene Goulemarian. He's 35. He's not the oldest guy around, but he's certainly not the youngest. Something needs to happen.
Something's got to give.
We'll see if this potential matchup actually materializes.
Stop ducking Wilder. Ain't nobody ducking Wilder, man. Tell him to pay me what I deserve, bro. Nah, they're trying to pay me what they paid me for my last fight. It doesn't make sense. You're climbing up the ladders, and then you get a big task, and you're supposed to beat him. I fucking beat him, and the purse is supposed to go higher and higher and higher. That's the way it goes. If you don't know, then don't say shit. $10 million or less. I'll fight him for $10 million. Fuck it. If you show Wilder what I be doing inside the gym and how I'll be looking, he's not going to want to fight, and he's going to want to pay me less money. Fucking pussy-ass fool.
Bonafide case of he said, she said. When last we heard, by way of Deontay Wilder, what Andy wanted for that fight was something to the tune of 20 to 25 million, whereas what Andy is saying is he'd do it for 10
million.
What Andy is saying is they were trying to offer him the same kind of money for Deontay Wilder that he just made for Luis Ortiz. And if it's the way that Andy says it is, and that's what they were actually proposing, I take issue with that. You should make for Deontay Wilder
What you make for Luis Ortiz? Come on.
There's one problem.
What?
That's Andy's version of the story. According to Deontay, Andy wanted 20 to 25 million. That's a lot of cash.
Yeah.
Many are saying that this is the PBC's biggest year in the sport, that they're having a fantastic year over there at PBC and Showtime. But you have to pay attention to how many of their fights are box office fights, how many of their fights are pay-per-views. You're talking about Gervonta Davis versus Hector Garcia,
1.
Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia,
2.
Caleb Plant versus David Benavidez,
3.
Crawford versus Spence,
Canelo versus Charlo.
Gervonta Davis's next fight, which is rumored to be an Isaac Cruz rematch, and what would have been a Wilder versus Ruiz fight. That's something like 7 or 8 pay-per-views.
Just about.
So the relevance of that, you ask? Well, the people at Showtime are now accommodating more fighters than they were before. You have to remember that not that long ago, PBC's stable of fighters was divided between two separate platforms, Showtime on one end and Fox on the other. But Fox decided not to renew, decided to leave the sport of boxing, thus all those fighters they had fighting on Fox, like Andy Ruiz.
They're on Showtime now.
Showtime can't accommodate them all. Showtime cannot accommodate all of their financial demands. That's at least in part what's going on. Is $10 million too much to ask for a Wilder fight? That's the question. Well, it seems to me that it's more than Showtime can afford to spend. More than Showtime has got at this point in the juncture. And that's if it's the way that Andy Ruiz says it is. Bear in mind that there are two different versions to this story. Wilder says this guy wanted anywhere in between 20 to 25 million. Andy says he's willing to fight him for 10.
Andy says Al Haymon is trying to shortchange him. He's offering him the same kind of money for Wilder that he just made with Ortiz.
Based on this, it doesn't look like Deontay Wilder is going to squeeze in a fight between now and the time he fights Anthony Joshua early next year. And as we all know, it's not Showtime or the PBC bankrolling that fight. That fight is being paid for by the Saudis.
I don't think Showtime or the PBC have any involvement in that event.
It doesn't look like it when you consider that, one, Anthony Joshua fights exclusively on the DAZN platform, at least these days he does, and the Saudis are the ones paying for the show. The Saudis are the ones paying for the fight.
Where does Showtime fit into that picture?
Showtime doesn't have it in the budget to do Wilder versus Ruiz. So of what use are they to that fight? Of what use are they to Joshua versus Wilder?
None.
You think about the sheer number of pay-per-views you're getting from that one platform, just that one platform, and what that indicates to me is that while Showtime and the PBC may be having a very big year, their annual budget for the year, it must have shrunk, because why are so many of these fights ending up as pay-per-views? Likely because the network's not just going to throw money at these guys.
No.
They're not going to break the bank trying to satisfy the financial demands of all of these fighters because they ain't got it in the budget.
Got that whole situation between them and Paramount, declining viewership, declining subscribership.
Just not in a position right now to overspend on content that accounts for less than 10% of their overall subscribership. That's boxing. You know, most people that subscribe to Showtime, they're not actually there for sports. They're there for TV shows and story-based programming. So as you can imagine, they're not going to approve these astronomical numbers, astronomical purses to these fighters.
If you were to give Andy Ruiz 10 million, what would you have to give Wilder?
More than Andy, I'd say. What, 12 million, 15 million? That would bring the size of the pot to about $25 million? Just to generate $25 million at a price point of $80, you'd have to sell around 312,000 pay-per-view buys, roughly 312,000, and neither Deontay Wilder or Andy Ruiz sold that many pay-per-views in their last fight.
Neither of them did.
Showtime at this time are in no position to gamble, in no position to take a loss on an event.
My best guess. That's why this fight isn't happening. That's why it's not made.